Hello friends, welcome to CEC lectures once again. We were talking about the different kinds of threats which plague the e-commerce portals, and we had talked about one very common type of threat, that is the spoofing threat. Now we will be talking about financial frauds which take place on these e-commerce portals. So ever since the first online businesses entered the world of the internet, financial fraudsters have been giving businesses a big pain. So there are various kinds of financial frauds which are prevalent in the e-commerce industry, and two most common types of financial frauds which occur are first the credit card fraud. So credit card frauds they occur when a cyber criminal will use stolen credit card data to buy products on the e-commerce store. So usually in such cases how does a company ascertain whether it is the genuine person who is making the purchase or it is some cyber criminal who is doing it? They can do an address mapping, right? So address verification can be put in place. So what is address verification? That is the billing address and the shipping address. They will vary because the billing address will be the address of the true person to whom the card belongs, and the shipping address will be of the cyber criminal because he is using the product to be delivered to his place. So you can detect and curb such activities if you have this kind of address verification system installed in the e-commerce portal. Then another form of credit card fraud is when the fraudster is stealing the personal details and identity and enable them to get a new credit card, right? So when a person loses the credit card, and if the person is not very vigilant, so then the cyber criminal can use that information and get another card issued to them. Then in case of another type of financial fraud is when a cyber criminal can start or initiate a fake return or refund fraud, right? So when these people, they are unauthorized transactions, they take place, and then they will always clear the trail. So these cause business great losses, and hackers also engage in refund frauds where they file fake requests for returns or refunds. So when they are asking money for refund, so then they will give their own bank account details so that the money is transferred to their account. So in this case again, this is a very big racket which works in this case, and we have seen multiple examples in which this kind of a cyber criminal activity has taken place. Another important type of threat is the data theft. So in data theft, what happens is that the hackers, they will break into networks and they will break into the e-commerce systems, and they will steal proprietary data about the business. Say for example, they have trade secrets or pricing policies or new product launch or any kind of innovation strategy or any kind of information which is vital for the success of the business. So these hackers will take that information from the e-commerce portal, and then they sell this information to the competitors or the business rival, and sometimes even to other cyber criminals, which they will sell it, and they will sell it at a very high cost. Particularly if this information is of use for the competitors, then it becomes like it becomes like an invaluable possession by the cyber criminal, and he can use it to sabotage the future of an e-commerce portal. Another type of threat which we see is the phishing threat. So in this case, what happens that e-commerce shops, they have received reports of customers which receive messages or emails from hackers which are masquerading to be the legitimate store owners. In case of phishing, the website will be created. So spoofing and phishing attacks are very similar to each other with very minute difference amongst them. So these fraudsters, they will present fake copies of the website pages, and maybe they will try to copy reputed websites, and they will trick the users into believing in, right? So they look very harmless, they look very authentic, right, but they will actually use it. So if you look at this picture which you can see here, so this looks like a genuine PayPal website, but if you look at it carefully, then there will be certain mistakes which you can see. So if the user is an alert and a conscious user, then they can easily catch a fake website from a genuine website. So they can, it's not very difficult to even catch these, but generally, you know, naive users, uninformed users who are, you know, sort of caught unaware, they can fall prey to this and they can put their data here, and then definitely this will lead to a attack. Then another type of threat which we see is the spamming attack. So spamming threat is also very, you know, difficult, because in this case the cyber criminals or these bad players which are working in this area, they will send infected links via email or social media inboxes, and they can leave these links in their comments or messages, even in case of blog posts and contact forms. So once the user will click on these links, then they will take you to their spam website. So there you can become a victim. Right. So these websites, they can of course slow the website of, you know, the performance can be affected, the response time of an e-commerce website can be affected. So basically this can lead to, you know, defaming of your website also, because if, you know, your website has got certain spam links, then that can also cause the users, or that can cause your prospective buyers or customers to get, you know, irritated, and they may not want to. Another type of threat is the denial of service and distributed denial of service attacks. Now in many e-commerce websites, we have seen that the, you know, the server becomes unresponsive, or the site becomes down, you know, it becomes disrupted. So this leads to a decline in the overall sales of the business house, because, you know, what happens is that certain miscreants, they will send large number of requests to the servers of the e-commerce website. Of course, these requests will be from untraceable IP addresses, and therefore the server eventually will crash, and then it will not be available to the legitimate or visitors or to the correct customers of your website. So there can be two types of denial of service attack. So first is the denial of service attack, in which, you know, the attacker will attempt to prevent the legitimate users from accessing information because the server is become down. In case of distributed denial of service attack, in this case an attacker may use your computer to attack another computer. So here your computer, in the distributed denial of service attack, your computer is becoming both as a victim of the attack and as well as the perpetrator of the attack. So your computer is becoming both the victim as well as the agent of the cybercrime. In denial of service, your computer only becomes a victim. So distributed denial of service attack is all the more, you know, harmful for your reputation and for your business. Then we have different kinds of malware. So malware basically is an umbrella term, you know, which is used for any kind of malicious software which are designed by hackers, and these are used, you know, on your, they can be installed on your computer systems, they can be installed on your servers, on your networks, and these will include spyware, viruses, Trojan, different kinds of ransomware, and they can, you know, create a lot of problem. Like for example, Trojan, you know, Trojan is a program, basically it's a malware, again it's a malicious software which looks, you know, harmless, but when it installs in your computer, then it can you know, harm, or it can damage your software systems or your entire computer system to a great deal. So therefore these malwares are very commonly spread by competitors, and they are, you know, installed on e-commerce servers so that they can steal the data from the servers, they can, you know, disrupt the functioning of the server. Each kind of malware will have a specific target when it is, you know, installed in a particular kind of server. So the systems of the customers, you know, or your admins and other users, they can have different Trojan horses downloaded on them, and these program will easily take away any data which can be present on the infected system. And they, of course, they will, when you are exchanging data from a user's system onto your system, then the Trojan can also, there is a possibility that the Trojan can also infect the website of the e-commerce provider also. So therefore malware also present a very pertinent threat to different kinds of e-commerce portals. Then another very important type of threat which we are seeing is every website has got some vulnerabilities. As I said, every computer system, every information system for that matter has got certain vulnerabilities which remain unknown many a times. But all these attackers and cyber criminals, they are always on the lookout for those vulnerabilities which are existing in the e-commerce store. So this e-commerce store becomes vulnerable. So there are two main types of vulnerabilities. One is known as the SQL injection and the other is known as cross-site scripting or XSS. So SQL injection basically works it's again a malicious technique where the hacker will attack the query submission forms to be able to access the backend database. So whenever all of the e-commerce websites, they will ask the user for filling certain form or asking certain information. So when this SQL query or when this query is running at the database, so then this technique will use and they will corrupt the database with this malicious query entering the database, and then it will collect the data, and also after doing all the damage and collecting and stealing the data, all these malicious softwares and all these malintended people, they will wipe out all the trail, so that it becomes impossible to also see what all aspects of data have been lost or have been compromised for that matter. Then another kind of vulnerability which is hand on upon by the attackers is the cross-site scripting. Now in cross-site scripting, what happens, that the attacker will plant a malicious JavaScript code on the e-commerce store, right, and this JavaScript code which will run, it will target the online visitors and customers. So they can access the customers' cookies, okay, and they can use all different kinds of techniques to capture the data of the user and to harm the data. So therefore for this content security policy is very, very important. You must have seen commonly that whenever any JavaScript code is there on a browser, then the browser will not allow that to run. That is because the content security policy has been enforced in the browser. So it's also a responsibility of the e-commerce portal to make sure that all these security measures are adopted by the user. So the e-commerce portal can also prompt the users, prompt their customers that you need to install this kind of policy, you need to have this kind of measures into your system so that you are protected of any kind of online threats or any kind of online vulnerabilities. Then another very important and very common threat these days is the bots. So we know bots are automated programs which they will run on their own on the internet, they will keep scanning the websites, but these bots are really harmful bots which we are talking about, and they will scrape the website and they will get the inventory information about what inventories are there, what prices are there, and other aspects of your e-commerce business sites which are there. So these hackers, they will use they will sell this information to the competitors, or they are generally hired by the competitors because they need that kind of data. So they can modify the prices in their website. They want to up the sales of their company by comparing their sales with the particular e-commerce website. So bots can they can come work as impersonators, that is they are trying to work as they are trying to project themselves as a harmless bots which are just trying to scan through the page, and so therefore they can be difficult to identify. These can be scrapers which will just try to extract information. They can be spammers who are going to bombard the users servers by sending these spam emails and redirecting the customers to different sites, and there can be used other hacker tools also which these bots can be using. So therefore bots are very, very harmful for any kind of e-commerce website because they can cause vast amount of multi-dimensional damage as compared to the other kind of threats. Then another kind of threat which is the brute force which is used. Now brute force means that the fraudulent program will be connected to the website, and basically they will try multiple combinations of passwords to obtain the different passwords which are there in the website, which are stored in the website. So these programs, they are automated programs which try to work, and they will work on the phenomena of guessing the correct password. So brute force attack will try to crack the password for the admin panel, it will try to crack the password for the servers and for the other important employees of the company, and therefore it's very important that strong complex password is used which is hard to guess. Dictionary words should never be used as a password, and also it's also the responsibility of the company to keep prompting the users that they need to change their passwords frequently. So not just the company's employees, but also the customers should be prompted that they need to keep changing their passwords, and they need to have some difficult complicated passwords. Then there are man in the middle attacks also which take place. So here basically when a communication is taking place between the store and the user, so this can take place on a Wi-Fi, or it can take place on another vulnerable network like an open network sometimes. So then in that case it's very easy for a hacker to listen to that communication while the data is being transferred from one system to the other on an open Wi-Fi or on a vulnerable network. So then they can act as a man in the middle, and they can eavesdrop, or they can steal the data while it is being shared between the two computers over an insecure network. So man in the middle attack needs to be controlled. There are multiple ways using, like we talk about encryption, we talk about authentication. So all these methods can be used, all these techniques can be used for avoiding this kind of attack. Then e-skimming attacks are also very common. So e-skimming involves infecting a website's checkout pages with malicious software. So the page where the user is going to fill in the billing information and the payment details, so those pages they could be infected, and from there the user's personal and payment details can be stolen, right? So any e-commerce business person, we have to keep sure that these security threats are real, and you can never underestimate how much damage these threats can bring to your business. So therefore it's also the responsibility of the e-commerce providers, of the e-commerce stores, to have security solutions in place. So these security solutions will make sure that the site, the store is preserved, it is protected from all these kinds of threats. So some of the security solutions which are commonly used are, of course, the HTTPS and the SSL certificates. So we already know that the HTTP secure protocols will not just keep the user's sensitive data secure, but it will also boost the website's ranking on Google search pages, right? Because all those sites which are HTTPS, they seem to have a higher rank order than the other websites. So this will also secure the data transfer between server and the user's devices. So therefore they prevent any kind of interception or any kind of man in the middle kind of attack, because the data is being shared in a format which lends it useless for any person, any unauthorized person who is trying to receive that data, right? So then some browsers they block visitors access to the website if such protocols are in place. So we should always have the updated SSL certificate from the host. As I already told you that the SSL certificates needs to be in place for both the client, that is the customer, as well as the server, and these SSL certificates need to be updated, otherwise the user will not be able to access certain kinds of website. Then anti-malware and antivirus software is very, very important, because they will detect, remove and prevent any kind of infectious software, that is all kinds like viruses or trojans or spyware or spamware. All these can be protected by using this kind of software. So malware is one term which we use for all these. So therefore there are multiple softwares, you know, which can be used for protecting the information systems and for protecting the networks and the e-commerce store from any kind of attacks which may take place here, right. So antivirus software is another software which is meant to keep viruses at bay. So although a lot of antivirus softwares have been evolved to prevent infection, right, but it's always important that the PC is protected with a strong antivirus software, and this antivirus software is always kept updated. That is again a very important, you know, precondition for securing your system, because an unupdated antivirus software is like using no software at all. So therefore constantly updating the antivirus software is again very important. Then it also requires that the admin panel and the servers are always kept secure, because we have seen how brute force attacks can, you know, use these vulnerabilities and they can harm the system. So always we need to ensure, the e-commerce stores need to ensure that the complex passwords are used. These passwords should be difficult to guess, right, and they should always be, you know, changed frequently. And it is always good to restrict user access and define user roles, so that, you know, accountability and traceability can be maintained. Every user should only perform what their role allows them to do on the admin panel, right. So therefore, and also it should be made sure that if any foreign IP tries to access the admin panel, a notification alert should be given to the person. Otherwise, you know, what will happen, that if your admin panel and your server becomes insecure, then the entire system becomes vulnerable, because that can lead to loss of information, loss of data, and also any kind of access related issues which can come onto your portal. So therefore admin panel and server needs to be secure. It is also very important to have a secure payment gateway, right, because we are storing credit card information on the client of, you know, on our database. We've already said that we are using third party payment gateways like PayPal or, you know, the Citrus Pay. They are handling our payment transaction, and this is happening away from our website. So it's very important that we ensure better safety for the customers' personal and financial data. So credit card data security is also, of course, as I already said, that it's also a requirement for, you know, you need to have a PCI DSS compliant. So any person, any vendor, any e-commerce store cannot handle anybody's personal and financial data if they are not complying by the PCI DSS standards. So they can only handle this. So when you are sharing, because payment gateway is of course a third party, so when an e-commerce portal is sharing their users data, their customers data with a third party, so they need to have a proper information security policy in place. A proper contract needs to be signed with the payment gateway authorities, otherwise this can lead to a lot of this. Then of course a firewall needs to be deployed. Although some of the companies, you know, they feel that this can be a costly affair, but effective firewalls can keep away fishy networks, they can keep away the cross scripting, SQL injection and other kinds of cyber attacks which are continuing, you know, to hit the headlines. So they also help in regulating traffic to and from the online store, so to ensure passage of only trusted traffic. So whatever, you know, it requires, but a robust firewall which is implemented on the server of the e-commerce portal can, you know, can free the e-commerce store owners of a large number of worries related to the cyber security and the threats which can be looming on the portal. Then it's also very important to constantly keep your employees and customers, you know, educated about the latest things which are happening. Latest knowledge needs to be imparted to them concerning handling of user data and how to engage the website security, right. So former employees details needs to be removed and all their access needs to be you know, revoked. Otherwise this can also lead to any kind of disgruntled employee can also be the biggest, threat to your system. So therefore constantly you need to keep your staff and your customers motivated about the whole thing. Besides this, there are multiple additional security implementations also, which all e-commerce websites need to be, aware of, which they need to be, constantly taking care of. Like, they always need to scan their websites and other online resources for any kind of malware. So it's the primary duty of the website owner or the company to make sure that, all their online resources are free of any kind of infection, of any kind of malware, because the same, they can be transferred to their clients, to their users also. Then it's also very important that because, we are talking about multi-layer security for data protection, so backup of the data still should be maintained, because as we've already discussed, that in case of intangible transactions which are happening, right, in case of e-commerce, all transactions are basically intangible transactions. So it's very important that all data is protected, because all data needs to be stored. You cannot discard any data, but definitely you need to protect the privacy of your esteemed customers also. So therefore multiple layered security processes should be, put in place, so which can boost the protection of the users. Then all the systems should be updated frequently, right? So all security plugins should be made sure that they are there in the place, and a security platform that is, secure from frequent cyber attacks. We need to know more about what are the steps. The people who are, working in this area, they need to know, they need to have the latest updates upon the steps which are required for your e-commerce store. So this was, all about the security implementations and how the e-commerce portal can be, made secure in spite of all the threats, which are just ready to plug into the system. So that will be all for today's lecture. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much.